Hi everyone. Oh my god, this is amazing. I'm so excited to see people, so many people joining from different places to talk and share ideas and insights about corporate sustainability and climate action and how we can mitigate climate change and do it in a way that makes sense financially, that promotes business objectives. One thing that we ask of you during this event is, wow, I see more people are joining, but we really believe in starting on time, so, we will just go ahead. One thing that we ask of you is if you could please think about, during the event, just ask yourself, what can be my next step or our next step? So what you can do to move forward and to empower your company into tackling climate change together with other companies around the world and people who are joining us and are a part of the Flaminga community. So just ask yourself, what is the next step? And hopefully what we want is to inspire you to go ahead and do that. And also we will share some practical tips and knowledge, professional knowledge. This event is for people who wish to accelerate their company's climate action. So we're here to support you in that with everything that you need. Please stay with us until the end of the event. Actually, a few parts of it have been recorded in advance because it involves people from different time zones. But stay with us. We want to answer questions. Please feel free to write in the chat. And if time won't allow to answer all the questions, so also feel free to write to us. We will also share our email at the end of the event, and you will also be able to see how you can create your own game plan, or boost your existing strategy in your company. So whether you're a professional in this field or you simply care and want to accelerate, or ignite or boost your company's climate action, you've reached to the right place. So let's start. Today, hosting the event would be my amazing co-founder and CTO, Julia. She will present herself shortly and what we do at Flaminga and what would be the event's agenda and our amazing speakers. So thank you, everyone, and let's start. Julia, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Super excited to be here. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Google Campus for Startup, for hosting this event and for your support in general. I'm Julia Peckerman, co-founder and CTO of Flaminga. Flaminga is a corporate sustainability navigator, specializing in from zero to green hero, guiding and helping green champions to find their path and to make an impact. And today, with us, we have our highly estimated and respected lecturers. Noam Talvered, a corporate sustainability expert, renewable energy researcher, and a former Deloitte ESG consulting practice leader, who will be sharing with us her unique insights on the business case for sustainability in businesses. You are an inspiration, Noam. Then, after understanding why companies are into climate action and benefit from sustainability in general, we will talk about the how.
We will review 2 practical sustainability best practices, diving into novel ways to produce food and green coding. In both, we will start with a professional research background and finish with sharing practical ways in which you can really make an impact within your organization.
First, Dr. Maya Ben-Ami, the co-founder of TasteLike, a more climate-friendly food database, and food technology due diligence consultant. We will be talking about reimagining food production to create a better world. At last, but not least, Jonathan Kra,
A world-renowned speaker and a brilliant coder who would like to share some interesting insights, information, and useful techniques to shed light on the topic of green coding.
To summarize, Ligovish, Flaminga CEO, will share a few of our own practical tips about what we like to call low-hanging fruits and the immediate impactful steps. How can we make an impact today while promoting business objectives? A good example would be encourage greener events, and very importantly, how can you enroll your management to get them on board? So thank you everyone for making the time to discuss how can all make this world a better place. The first speaker will be Noam Telvered. Noam, the floor is yours.
Hi everyone, welcome, and thank you Flaminga for hosting this event. I'll be speaking to you today about the business case for corporate climate action. My name is Noam Telvered. I'm a sustainability expert and consultant, and I've dedicated my life to sustainability consulting because I believe that the business sector has an immense role in tackling climate change, and this is why I'm here to help them do that. I want to start with the big question of what does businesses have to do with climate change? This isn't trivial because sometimes we would believe that all of these things that corporates can do and are doing on their day-to-day basis are just completely unrelated, right? They are providing food for their employees, they are using different resources, they have their own offices, and they might even have their own procurement processes. And all of these, not surprisingly, have a lot to do with climate change because they all create emissions. Greenhouse gas emissions are the one responsible for a major part of man-made induced climate change, and this in turn creates a greenhouse effect that exacerbates the climate change processes and creates what we know today as the climate crisis. Why do we see companies going green? Why do large organizations like Google, Intel, Microsoft, and many others engage in climate actions? I mean, the business of business is doing business, right? They are supposed to be focusing on their profits, on their business activities that generate revenues. But the thing is that sustainability is good for business. It can be harnessed to promote various types of business objectives, and this is what we're going to speak about today. We can talk about 6 quantifiable business benefits for corporate sustainability, or in other words, what is the business case for corporate sustainability? We can talk about innovation and opportunity creation. We can talk about operational efficiency, talent attractions, and many more. Let's dive in. When we're talking about innovation and creating opportunities, we're talking about focusing on one of the most pressing issues in the world. Climate action tackles specifically the climate crisis, helping organizations identify both social and environmental causes that are pressing, helps them identify new business sectors and new opportunities for them. In short, we can see that the short-term challenges, such as major disruptions in supply chain, can become a business opportunity if only businesses can identify the opportunity to create innovation and tackle these issues. So something that is a short-term financial distress like supply chain disruption can then become an opportunity for improvement by companies that understand that tackling climate change is also beneficial. Brand and reputation is another major pillar because consumers are preferring to buy green. They are preferring to support companies that align with their interests and align with their values. And companies that are smart enough to become sustainable, to implement green measures and climate action are companies that are willing to and able to attract quality base of consumers. And indeed, we can see that brands that are committed to sustainability overperform their peers. Another major issue is risk management. Of course, beside the climate-related risks, which are obviously related to climate action, other types of risk are mitigated as well when climate action is in place. From regulatory compliance to supply chain disruption and enhancing operational efficiency, all types of issues are better managed when the risk management is in place, deriving from proper sustainability practices. Organizations that are smart enough to manage the risks today will be the ones harnessing the benefits tomorrow. And in fact, the cost for businesses of mismanaging climate-related issues is immense. The United Nations estimated that the impact of climate-induced extreme weather is costing businesses more and more each year. This is as much as $280 billion worldwide. Another main business pillar is the talent attraction. Commitments to sustainability enhances a company's ability to attract, engage, and retain talent because people care about the environment and they want to work for organizations that match these values. This is especially true for the Y and Z generations, which are composing a growing part of the workforce in these days. And indeed, 45% of college graduates in the United States say they would take a 15% pay cut to work for the right company. This is according to a Deloitte survey conducted recently. Moreover, we can see that over half of the respondents said that sustainability is becoming more and more important when defining their ideal job. So talent is seeking companies that are more sustainable, and therefore being sustainable allows companies to attract quality talent. Another major issue is operational efficiency. Being sustainable usually means being cautious when utilizing natural resources. This can be water or energy, and it could also be waste reduction efforts. So being sustainable is also being efficient. And we can see that companies would typically experience up to 80% internal return on investment in their sustainability-related projects. This is according to a Harvard Business School survey recently published. And finally, access to capital. In 2024, a growing $30 trillion are invested globally in sustainable investment practices. And we can see that companies that are choosing to become sustainable can access this capital, as opposed to companies that leave sustainability behind and miss out on the opportunity. And indeed, a meta-analysis of 167 studies conducted over 35 years revealed a very strong positive correlation between the two. We can see that being sustainable is correlated with being financially successful. Another interesting thing is that sustainability market continues to grow. Investors are expected to funnel an additional $4 trillion into creating and scaling new decarbonization businesses specifically. So we can see that climate change is being a catalyst for investment in the new era. So we can see that companies that are sustainable can gain a lot of profit out of this. Being green is not only being green, it is being successful. It is being adequate to the 21st century. It is responding to your talent. It is responding to your customers. It is responding to your stakeholders as a whole. And therefore, being sustainable has a very strong business case. So being sustainable isn't only good for the environment, it's good for the bottom line. It helps you attract quality talent, gain access to capital, better manage your risks, gain higher operational efficiency, and of course, strengthen your brand and reputation, along other benefits. This is your chance to speak to your superiors. This is your chance to speak to your managers. Call to action. Call them on board for the sustainability effort. This is the time for climate action. It's your time. Join us. So thank you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat. But how can I make my company sustainable? I work in a huge corporate and it's very difficult to change everybody's minds. You're right, that's a very good question. It's very hard to change everybody's minds on the spot. But the thing is that we're talking about progress. We're talking about evolution and not revolution. So the key here is to engage slowly with the management to demonstrate the business case for sustainability, and then start making small but important steps towards a sustainable business. You can begin by creating engagement with the management and with other peers, by the way, and then slowly evolve into engaging with key suppliers like Flaminga, for example, that can help you take this to the next level. What are some key issues that a corporate should keep in mind when they wish to become more sustainable? So that's a great question. The fact is that there is no one predefined set of ESG, environmental, social, and governance issues that is suitable for all companies out there. It depends on what is your core activity. It depends what are your specific characteristics. It depends on what you're willing to do and the resources that you have. So the first stage in engaging in sustainability action or actions or climate action in specific would be to map the relevant ESG related issues, and even without the climate action, what specific activities your organization can do to better tackle climate change. There's essentially no right or wrong answer here. It really depends on what you can do and how far you're willing to go to do it. I am personally in love with corporate sustainability because I understand that the corporates have the ability to create the massive change that is required to tackle climate change in a global scale. So the vast majority of emissions are emitted because of business activities, and therefore businesses are the key to resolve this. but I'm just one employee. How can I convince the entire organization to join me? That is a painful point. We are all just that one person that wants to make a change. We all have great ideas, but how are we able to lead people to follow us and make sure that they also engage in climate action? And the answer isn't simple. We begin as ambassadors. We begin as inspirational leaders. And the more we talk about it, the more we spread the word on the importance of climate action and how sustainability in corporates can actually be beneficial for the corporates themselves, we are able to pursue our objectives with more and more people behind us. The ability to create collaborations between departments within the organization is a key factor to a successful implementation of sustainability practices. At the end, it wouldn't matter if you by yourself would do everything to make a company greener. If HR and marketing and finance and legal wouldn't be supported by you and wouldn't support you, this would never happen. So you have to create this buy-in. You have to make sure that everybody understands that we're here working towards the same goal and have them enrolled with you on this task. How do we make sure that our carbon footprint is lowered on a year-to-year basis? So carbon footprint is a very complex thing to measure because it depends on what you define as we. So are we talking about the entire company's operation? Are we talking about your team? One of the key components of successful implementation of sustainability practices in organizations require a lot of people from a lot of different departments to work together towards a specific goal. So if you, for example, would want to define your company's strategy, one of your company's strategy components to lower the carbon footprint or to shrink it, then this would mean that you have to first define the scope and then create actionable steps to pursue. From my experience working with the largest corporates in the world, I can tell you that a lot of corporate leaders want to make a change. They want to be greener. They want their organizations to lower their carbon footprint. They just don't know how to do it. This is exactly why you guys should be the one being ambassadors for this. You should be the one pursuing this opportunity with them, helping it create a real impact in the organization. So engaging with Flaminga could be a great way to engage in climate action. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Noam. Super informative and helpful. And now, let's hear from our next speaker, Dr. Maya Ben-Ami.
Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Maya Ben-Ami Pritzker. I'm an alternative protein consultant and due diligence expert. And today we're going to talk about more sustainable ways to produce food. Thus, the title of this presentation is called Reimagining Food Production to Create a Better World. What does that mean? Essentially, we need to be feeding around 10 billion people by 2050. Preferably, let's do that sustainably, efficiently, safely, and profitably. However, the status quo shows us that intensive farming, both animal agriculture, food and vegetable agriculture, are causing some giant impacts on our planet. For example, it's anywhere taking up from 14 to 15% of greenhouse gas emissions. It's the number one user of freshwater resources on the planet. The number one cause of deforestation, primarily due to cattle ranching and also the soy and corn used to feed those cattle. Manure and fertilizers from conventional agriculture systems are causing widespread land and water pollution. Additionally, animal agriculture is the number one user of antibiotics on the planet. Antibiotics that we need as humans are also being used with animals, thus causing a lot of antibiotic resistance. Health, of course, the more animals you try to put into confined spaces, the more risks of diseases and species transfer between those diseases. As we see now, for example, with the avian flu jumping from birds to cows and now to humans. Thus, foodborne illnesses are also on the rise, the more animals we have. Additionally, of course, it's not just affecting animals. We have economically disadvantaged adults and children globally who are being exploited by our conventional animal agriculture systems and fruit and vegetable agriculture systems. And of course, most of us don't want so many animals to be slaughtered on a daily basis, because right now we have about 1 billion slaughtered per day to feed the planet, and those numbers are going to rise, and that also means that we're putting more animals in more confined spaces. What do these conventional agriculture impacts have on global financial security and geopolitical conflicts and disease? Well, the connections are here. For example, in August of 2018 in China, half of China's breeding pigs were either killed or had a disease, the swine flu. Chinese hog farmers, 80% of them decided not to restock, and therefore this created tremendous price increases, affecting, of course, the most vulnerable who need the food. Governments want food security and don't want people to revolt. We're seeing same effects, of course, with the avian flu and egg prices, and of course now with dairy because of the avian flu jumping species to now cows. Therefore, as you see, I've been leading up to how meat and agriculture have a very intimate relationship. Livestock take up nearly 80% of global agricultural land, yet produce less than 20% of the world's calories. This is a really inefficient relationship to get your calories. Therefore, what we eat is more important than how much we eat in determining the amount of land required to produce our food. Most soy and corn globally are used for feeding animals. These crops occupy a large percentage of the land we can use to be farming other things. Animal feed already requires 30 to up to 50% of the global plant harvest. Globally, the FAO estimates that if 40% of all crops produced today were used instead to feeding humans, we would more sustainably be able to feed 9 billion plus people by 2050. As we see, this is just a really inefficient use of resources in terms of land, in terms of calories. As we see here, most of the planet does not have arable, farmable land for people to use. Only 10% of the planet is arable for farming purposes. 77% of that 10% is being used for livestock, and additional percentages are being used for the food and the crops to feed those livestock. Additionally, when you just think about it, at the end of the day, conventional meat creates a larger greenhouse gas impact per kilogram of protein than plant-based sources. As we see here, beef leads the way, but so does lamb, prawns, cheese, fish, pork. Basically, every animal-based product out there will exceed vegetable proteins, even the highest emitting vegetable proteins, in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. But as we know, not everyone wants to only eat plants. Vegetarians and vegans only make up around 6% of the global population. We need people like the flexitarians and omnivores who really want to eat meat to lower their greenhouse gas emission footprint based on what they're eating, because everyone wants to eat meat, and we're not going to probably change that. What can be done and what are the options? Well, when you think about complete protein, this is the idea of protein that athletes are, for example, obsessed with. It's the amino acids, the building blocks of protein that you cannot make on your own with your own body. They're called essential amino acids, and you have to get them from food. But you can actually get them from plant-based sources, not just tofu and soy, for example. There are other combinations and other types. You can get them from microbes. Many fungi, for example, also offer complete protein. And you can get them by not slaughtering animals. This is called cultivated meat, where you take samples from the animals you want to eat. We start them off in the lab, we grow them in bioreactors, and I'll get into that more here in just a second. What's important to know is that these are not new and scary technologies. Whether you're eating conventional meat or a new way to produce food via plant-based fermentation or cultivated meat sources, you first start out with the source. You take the cells, you optimize them, you grow them, and then you process them into what you want to eat, whether that be a burger or a steak. So following this line of logic, plant-based sources. As we know, anybody who's eaten a Beyond Burger, Impossible Burger, or another shelf full of plant-based meat analogs, which we find in any grocery store, you start out with a plant-based source or a fungi-based source, which is often categorized in plant-based aisles of the grocery stores, but it's not. It's actually its own thing, but that is what it is. You optimize them, you grow them, and then you process them into something you want at the end of the day. I'm not going to go into this, and it's not so sexy because we see them on the grocery shelves, but there are hundreds of products everywhere globally, mostly also in the US has the largest variety. What's more interesting, in my opinion, because this is my specialty as a microbiologist, is that we can be taking microbes, various types of microbes, processing them and making them into ingredients or whole biomass meat analogs. What that means, this is called fermentation-based protein production, either via precision fermentation or biomass fermentation. We can take a fungi, a bacteria, an algae, we optimize those cells, we grow them in fermenters, and then we can either make ingredients such as dairy-based protein analogs for your next plant-based milk, or we can make a whole biomass of the fungi into, let's say, a chicken analog, and it's very tasty. What's important to note is that these newer ways of producing proteins and ingredients are not actually that new. The technology has been around for decades, usually coming from the biomedicine and biopharma arenas. We see here that they often adopt an S-curve adoption rate, which means that they might be a little bit slow to take off, often at the beginning when everyone's optimizing things. And then within 5 to 10 years, they really do take off in terms of adoption until they plateau. For fermentation specifically, we've been making vitamins, minerals, enzymes, for food and biopharma for decades, and including almost 100% of the insulin produced today is produced via fermentation. So this technology, for example, has already been around. We're just now using it more to produce food ingredients and food whole protein analogs. Cultivated meat means essentially taking animal cells, optimizing them, growing them in bioreactors, and then either making them hamburgers or steaks. It's already on the market in Singapore, in the US, and soon be will in Israel now that it's legalized. What's interesting about it is that essentially you take a small sample from an animal that you want to eat, whether it be chicken, pork, beef burger. You take a biopsy from that animal, you optimize it, you grow it in a bioreactor, and then in the end, you process it into being what you want it to be. We already are growing fat cells, meat cells, muscle cells, and connective tissue cells this way. It's a process that has been used in the biopharma arena for decades, and again, we're just using it now to produce food on a different scale. But how sustainable are really these new technologies to produce food? Well, when you compare their environmental impacts, you see here on the top left, the land use for facilities for traditional conventional animal agriculture is much larger. You need a lot larger space for your livestock, for your cattle, for any grazing animal, including if you need chickens to be grown in a small coop. It's not comparable to how cultivated meat, fermentation, and plant-based sources need anywhere from 60 to 95% less land because you're basically producing them indoors, including the advent of plant-based agriculture, because with climate change, it is moving more indoors so that we can control for the effects. In terms of land use for feedstock, you obviously need large spaces again for those land animals to graze, along with large spaces for the corn and the soy to feed those animals. You don't need that for cultivated meat and fermentation feedstocks. They do rely on agricultural inputs, but they don't need to have the whole plant grown that way. You do need land to produce the proteins you want from, like, let's say soy for plant-based protein sources, but in this case, it's again much more efficient to just eat your soy instead of feeding that soy to a cow and then getting your calories. In terms of emissions, cows like to burp, they like to fart, and so does any other animal, just like us. Along with their manure, causes a lot of methane, carbon dioxide, nitrous emissions, And the most potent greenhouse gases are actually fluorinated gases, which are used in refrigeration. And when you need to refrigerate cattle and animals, meat products, and send them all over the world, for example, here we're getting beef from Argentina and from China, that is actually a large destroyer of the planet. Instead, you could be using renewable energy to fuel the facilities for cultivated meat and fermentation factories. And it's anywhere from 20 to 90% fewer emissions, because it very much depends on how much energy you need to produce the same amount of protein. And of course, hopefully you're using a renewable energy source. In terms of fermentation and plant-based sources, you can actually potentially have a net negative greenhouse gas emission profile, because there are some algae, for instance, in fermentation, and many plants that of course suck carbon dioxide from the air. So in that sense, you're actually doing better for the planet because you're absorbing greenhouse gas emissions. In terms of water use per kilogram of protein, traditional animal agriculture and livestock take anywhere from 10 to 20,000 liters for 1 kilogram of protein. You literally need 10 times less water to feed cultivated meat and fermentation cells, along with just water your plants. So the call to action here, what can we do? Essentially, number one, just be more conscious of your food choices. Essentially, the more plant-based proteins you eat, the better your greenhouse gas emission profile is. And just lower your intake of meat and dairy-based sources. Number two, if you're associated with catering, cafeteria, or food service at all, ask that plant-based be the default. There's a lot of studies showing that people are honestly too lazy to ask for more than what's offered at the table, and that plant-based dishes will improve your company's and events' greenhouse gas emission profile. Number three, 50 to 80% of food is actually wasted once it reaches the consumer. There's a lot of food waste along the food value chain, but in the control that we have as the consumers at the end of the value chain is to essentially reduce the amount of food we're wasting. In this case, we can, for example, ask that everyone take home a Tupperware full of food at any event, and there are other options that I'm sure Flaminga can offer you. And number four, education regarding regulation. There are a lot of people out there who are scared of these new protein production technologies, but these are sustainable and they are safe, and they have been reviewed by the USDA and the FDA, also here in Israel, as being safe to eat. Therefore, it's really important that people understand this, and we're not going to be outlawing these new production methods. It's really important if businesses and organizations align themselves via sponsorships, donations, or otherwise with other organizations that are promoting the education and research of these new protein production technologies. In addition, Flaminga can, of course, help you and your organization to create customized profiles and provide you more resources in order to understand how your organization can reduce your greenhouse gas emission profiles. Additionally, the organization I'm associated with, Tastelike, at www.tastelike.com, can also show you what options exist, especially in the American market, in terms of alternative protein products. There you can review products, discover your next favorite food, and or look for the nutritional profiles and ingredients and compare them against one another and conventional animal agriculture products. Therefore, thank you for having me. If you have more questions, please feel free to email me at mayabenami@gmail.com. or look at my website at www.mayabenami.com. Now it's time to answer some Q&A questions. Great question. Are the products made from these novel food technologies safe? Yes. The US FDA, the USDA, the Singapore Food Agency, and the Israeli Health Ministry, for example, have all legalized the sale or production of cultivated meat. They are actually being sold in stores and restaurants in Singapore and in restaurants in the US, not quite yet in Israel. In addition, fermentation-based ingredients have been around, again, for dozens of years, and are considered safe. And plant-based proteins, of course, will have on average less, if no hormones, microplastics, antibiotics, and fecal-borne pathogens on average compared to meat-based conventional food sources. It sounds more expensive to make food with these new technologies. Is this true? Well, yes. At the beginning, every new product is more expensive because it's in the iterative phase at the beginning where people are trying to optimize how these products can be made and all their sensory properties. However, the conventional animal agriculture industry, of course, is highly subsidized by most governments in order for food security purposes, meaning every part of the value chain, farmers are generally given money or grants along with a large amount of land and cheaper food in order to feed those animals. Novel protein production sources from cultivated meat, fermentation, and plant-based sources are not given those same subsidies at this point in time. If they were, they would be equal in price, if not cheaper, than conventional animal-based food products. Should you look for more elaborated information and customized strategies that suits your organization, I believe Flaminga would be your natural go-to. Refer to them in order to reduce your greenhouse gas emission profile. How can you protect farmers' jobs when replacing their jobs with new food production technologies? Well, everyone respects the farmer and the hard work that they do. No one's trying to replace what they're doing. They will always be around. The world needs more food and more protein regardless. Cultivated meat, fermentation, and plant-based protein production systems are actually meant to supplement what's already being created and or supplement the incomes of farmers who are already producing these foods. You can do that, for example, by giving conventional plant agriculturalists another food source to grow, for example, not just corn and soy if their land allows. Or you can, for example, build a facility next to a conventional cattle ranch and, for example, take samples from the cattle and use those samples and those biopsies to grow cultivated meat cells. And then you don't have to slaughter as many cows, and it can give another income source to the rancher. There are a lot of creative ways in which farmers can work in cooperation with novel food production systems in order for us to have a more sustainable food system. Thank you. Bye.
Wow, this was really eye-opening. Thank you. And now, let's hear about another use case of business-oriented sustainability. Let's hear it from our next speaker, coding ninja by day and green hero by night, Jonathan Kra.
Hi, welcome to this event. Thank you, Flaminga, for hosting it and for you for attending. I'm Jonathan, and not many people know this about me, but I used to be a guide in the Nature Protection Society in Israel. I used to teach kids about nature, the ecosystem, and how to protect it. And this has been my passion for a long time. I'm now happy to be able to combine my two passions, coding and protecting nature. And this is what we're going to talk about today, how you can do green coding, which is nature aware or ecology aware coding and IT. So I want to start from the beginning, from the sun. Not many people know this, but the most important thing we get from the sun is energy. Not just that, the same amount of energy that comes in is the same amount of energy that goes out from Earth. Otherwise, it would have been a bit hot in here. So for many years, it has been fine. Okay, we got the energy from the sun. Photosynthesis created life, of course. Even the greenhouse effect is good for us in a certain way, not too much as now, but it's a natural phenomena that keeps the Earth pretty stable. But then something happened. We started using fire, which was fine when we used to live like this. In small communities, we were, light fire to get warm or cook. But then we got a bit bigger. And the industrial age, of course, brought a lot of factories, trains, vehicles, and not only that, the energy consumption was pretty wasteful. This steam engine used to be used around 3% of the energy that it was consuming from coal. The rest was going as heat, for instance. So this is the industrial age. And now we're in a different era, of course. This is a data center that has now replaced the factories, both in economy but also in pollution levels. You can see here that the share of global CO2 emissions from the data center sector is the most prominent from all other sectors. Not only that, the prediction is that it's going to rise exponentially. Okay, that and all of the IT sector actually. And it's not only heat or CO2 emissions, it's also resources that are consumed, and we need a lot of water to cool our data centers. In this picture, you can see Microsoft's data centers put down into the ocean to get cooled. So imagine how much heat they create, and then they hit the environment around them in the ocean. What does that do to environment? So with all that knowledge, we need to think, how will our technology accommodate so many people, our growing race, and the needs of our race? Okay, when you think about it, it should be sustainable. Okay, we need to do it efficiently, become more efficient. We need to do it, of course, safely. And we need, of course, money to actually fund our whole civilization. And this is what green coding, these are topics I'm going to cover when I'll explain what green coding is. Of course, it's not the green code from the matrix. Green coding. And in order to understand green coding, let's start from something more basic. This is a person called George Ohm. Okay, he is responsible for the Ohm law, which is the relation between the voltage, the current, and the resistance in electricity, of course. So power in physics is actually the amount of energy we're using, is the amount of work we do over time. And if we look at electrical work, that means current times the voltage. And if we use Ohm's law, we can replace the voltage with the current and the resistance. And how does this relate to us? Because we have power, which is work over time. Work is the current squared times resistance. And to translate it into computer power, that means that if you look at current over time, that can be translated into data or data transfer or bitrate. Okay, and resistance can be translated into distance divided by size. So if we have longer distance to send our data through, that would require more energy, but the size of our, the cable would probably reduce the amount of energy we need to use. So what can you do? I'm going to show you two use cases that will make this clear. This is a caricature of a computer. We have the CPU. It gets instructions. It needs data. So it asks the bus to bring data from the memory. This is a relatively slow process, bringing data to the CPU. So this is why cache memory was invented. And in cache memory, the bus brings the data the CPU requested, plus data that is closer to this requested memory. Okay, and the heuristic is that data that is closer together will be processed together. So the bus would need to do less rides to bring memory. Okay, and we solve this slowness issue. The problem might arise when you write an algorithm that is processing data that is not close together. And let's see how it can affect how our code is doing. Okay, I didn't tell you about CPU and memory in order for you to be able to build a computer. What I want to talk to you about is how we can use this to make our applications faster and maybe even save cloud costs and of course conserve energy. We have two algorithms here. The top one it runs 90% faster than the bottom one, and they do exactly the same. The difference is that the top one is running on the data on the indices that are closer in memory, and the bottom one is running on the indices that are farther away in memory. So the bottom one has more cache misses. It needs to ask for more data from the memory all the time. So we increase the bitrate. And we increase the bitrate, we have more energy consumption, and we spend more time in our lambdas or cloud functions, and we pay for the cloud functions or for cloud functions by the time we use them. So the top algorithm is using 90% less cloud functions. So this is an example, pretty low-level example of how we can improve both the efficiency, reduce the energy consumption, and save on costs. Okay. Another example. Okay, and imagine that you had a dashboard or anything that could show you that. Then it would show you that after the change you made, you started saving CPU hours. And this translates to cloud savings, as I mentioned. And it might even give you some impact factor like green coins or green points. Okay, how much green impact you had or ecological impact you had when you made this change. That would have been great, right? Another example is from Monday.com. They published it. They actually changed and optimized their cloud infrastructure and managed to create savings of more than $500,000 a year. That's $500,000 by my account. And that's amazing, okay? They saved a lot of money. Behind the scenes, they are using less computing power, okay? And that's good for all of us. Maybe not for AWS because they get less money. So these are two. This is the second example. And so there are benefits in going green, right? We saw the cost savings of Monday.com. Okay, who doesn't want to save $500,000 every year? Also, employee welfare. Recent research by Deloitte shows that employees from Gen Z and millennials put the environmental impact of their employers when they seek jobs. And also, everyone wants a better world, right? Another research done by Hannah Ben Shabbat from Gen Z shows that Gen Zers put environmental impact of the product they're purchasing pretty high on their priorities, okay? Right after price and quality, we got environmental impact. So that means that we all want a better world, right? If you can do it and profit from it, why not? So you might ask how to start. First thing you can do is seek training, okay? Organizations like Flaminga offer training that not only help you optimize your applications and infrastructure and save money, they also help you measure the environmental impact of your actions, which is a huge added benefit. Raise awareness around you. Okay, you care, you can help others care, but by showing example, researching, asking for this training, utilizing what you learn. And we all make impact, okay? Even if you're the sole developer who does that, there are others around the world. And because the infrastructures get bigger and bigger, the cloud, the data centers are so huge that means that we can do something small, another one doing something small at another part of the earth, and together the power is ours. And thank you for listening. If you have any questions, there's a chat, or you can contact the Flaminga team. I'm sure they'll be very happy to answer. Thank you.
Is there an example for optimization you did in production?
Actually, that's one of my favorite topics. I did a lot of optimizations. I can talk about DevOps optimization I did. We started using GitHub Actions for our CI/CD, and we had a lot of automation. I believe in automation. And one day our DevOps team called us and told me my team is using 95% of the company's allowance in GitHub Actions time. And I had to optimize it. And I started using a lot of caching. I learned the hard way how to use the cache. And eventually I I reduced our GitHub Actions usage by around 95%, something like that. So you can utilize pretty simple principles and save a lot, or save a little and accumulate the saving. Anything goes.
What kind of impact a single developer has?
That's a very interesting question. We usually hear about stories like Monday.com, where you saved $500,000 a year. But most optimizations, they do a tiny bit difference. For instance, I made an optimization 2 months ago that saved my company $1,000 a month. That's not a big sum. But if you take a lot of developers who do the same, it accumulates. Imagine it like recycling bottles, for instance. Let's say you recycle 5 bottles a week, your neighbor 10, someone is doing a party 20, I don't know. It accumulates, and in 2 days the whole neighborhood fills up the whole recycling machine, or however you do it.
Sounds amazing. How can we start? What is the next step?
Okay, when I was a child, there was a commercial on TV of a person that asked, so it ended, so what to do? Do. Okay? So I gave a few recommendations of what to do. For instance, you can turn to Flaminga. I'm sure they have some data on their website, or you can contact them. They have a lot of information and knowledge to share. You can turn to your managers and present them the topic. You can also ask Flaminga for help with this. I'm sure they'll be very willing to help. And yeah, just be aware. You can start learning the process, the topic, and yeah, make an impact your way.
Thank you, Jonathan. Companies that go green inspire me personally, and that's an excellent way to achieve that. And now, Ligavish, the CEO of Flaminga, will share with us a few tips about low-hanging fruits in the world of corporate sustainability. Take it from here, Lee.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us and for taking the time to talk about sustainability, about climate action. I super appreciate it, and thank you again to all of our speakers, our amazing speakers. So what I want to talk to you about today is practical tips what you can do to greenify your company's activity. And we're just going to be talking about low-hanging fruits, like how you can hack your game plan, strategize, or boost an existing activity. I'm Lee Gavish, the co-founder and CEO of Flaminga, and after working, with companies from around the world in different sizes, what we've seen is that there are a few principles that really help to create results. So if you want that, please stay with us, and I'll be happy to share some practical tips with you, and also the point of view to how we can see this process in a way that helps and motivates people and brings people, on board, and really creates results. So, all right, let's start. I'm going to be sharing my screen. Can you see my screen? Okay, yes, perfect. Thank you, David. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, everyone, for writing in the chat. Perfect. So let's start. So first of all, there's a question that always pops up, and that's like, do small steps even matter? And I mean, spoiler, yes, but I want to talk about that for a second, and explain why, and then talk about the practical steps that you can take. So the first principle would be, shockingly enough, stuff accumulates. Kind of like, I don't remember like putting so many dishes in the sink. I just remember a tiny spoon here and there, but the dwarfs came. So in a similar way, when we do small things in the company or just during our life, they tend to accumulate and to create certain results. And there's a reason why we've reached as humanity to where we are. So this also gives us control, because we created this, we're able to change it. This is within our range of control to some extent. So these tiny steps that we do accumulate. And also, you're not alone. Sometimes you feel like, okay, so I'm not going to send an email. What difference can this make, right? Or I'm going to change, let's say 100% or 98% of the company's emissions. We're going to, do whatever. But what difference does it make? There are so many companies. So these things accumulate, and you are not alone. You're part of a global movement that we see. We also help to accelerate it. This is actually our main goal, to accelerate the transition into the global green economy. And not just green, sustainable. There's climate action, there are the social aspects and all that. We want to accelerate this. We believe that working with companies is the best solution, because you work with one person and you have such a wide spectrum of influence. So this is what we're here to do. And when you're doing something small and somebody else does something small, and every one of us, we do stuff, they accumulate, and we create this movement. And this social movement even is what we're aiming for. So these things combined can really change the reality, but it cannot happen without you, without her, without them. We need everyone on board. So just more and more people. So stuff that you do really matter. And let's talk about some numbers, how this reflects onto statistics, these small steps that matter. So, for example, 10% of the world's electricity usage is consumed by computers, data centers, and networks. So 30% of which goes to power terminal equipment, which means computers, mobiles, and other devices. 30% goes to data centers, and 40% goes to the network. So, you're charging your phone, you're using your phone, actually would be a better way of saying that. And this does accumulate to 10%. So some people would think 10% is like not much. Some people would say that's a lot. But let's just settle for substantial, like a substantial amount of electricity usage is contributed and comes from the usage of computers and devices and stuff like that. So 96% of companies use public cloud services. So this is meaningful. And actually companies really have the power to change because they can create the demand for greener services and products. So we're gonna jump into that really soon. And also another thing that accumulates is like 25.5 million a year. Just so that you know, even a small data center using a traditional cooling process can potentially use approximately 25.5 million liters of water each year. So, you know, and water is such an important resource, and this also affects climate change. I won't go into that in so many details right now, but just in general, okay, we can, you know, if there's time for more questions, I'll be happy to elaborate a bit more. And I just want to mention that the AI revolution is obviously making these numbers jump much higher. So these are not even so updated. This is just like for general reference. Some of them are actually jumped by over 40%. It's crazy. Like the usage of AI, obviously, how you can have a webinar today without saying AI. Obviously it affects the electricity usage and the usage of other resources such as water, for example. So just, you know, FYI, ChatGPT uses more than 500,000 kilowatt hours of electricity daily, and you know, according to the New Yorker. So in comparison, the average household in the USA uses just 29. Okay, comparing with more than 500,000. So estimating how much electricity the booming AI industry consumes is tough to pin down, but let's just say it's a lot. So when we're using these technologies, we should also, you know, bear in mind what are the outcomes of this. So when we're thinking about what we can do to change these numbers, we should also remember that, you know, stuff accumulates. So let's just start with little things, and they will, in the end, give us results. So, you know, use social media wisely when it matters. If you have so many emails that you never open, you can just like unsubscribe if it's relevant. And as a company, something that's super important, you can talk to your suppliers. You know, use the supply chain and just express your interest in greener products and services. So you create demand, and the more that they hear about it from different companies, this is something that we definitely encourage in Flaminga, in the supply chain package. So, you know, you create a demand for greener services. At the end of the day, that's gonna make a change. And when we increase sales of greener services and products, the prices go down, making them affordable for everyone. So this is a process, and it's a really, really important process that we want to accelerate. Also, just about ChatGPT, a general tip, if you're looking into stuff that you can do, is like just kind of jokingly saying, don't be a troll, right? Don't just like use it for fun, for stuff that are not important. Use it when it matters, okay? Take what you need from this planet. That's basically like the principle that we encourage. But there are like so many things that you can do around the company, like in the kitchen, right? You can ask your suppliers to not send you stuff that are wrapped in plastic. Why do you need so much plastic? It's absolutely useless. Or you can consume less frozen types of foods, because the frozen stuff, you know, they require more electricity. And so when you look generally around you, it can start from just like, you know, take the charger out when you're not charging your phone or your computer, turn the computer off when you're not using it, just like stuff like that. It feels like so little, but look, like, let's try to see it from the other angle. It just means that it's easy to make a change. Nothing that could affect your life, nothing that could, you know, create resistance or antagonism with like other colleagues or whatever, you could just like start with little tiny steps that are the low-hanging fruit, and it helps that it so happens to be also economical, right? Because all of these things save money. When you save resources, by definition, you're saving money. So this is really helpful. So if you sometimes feel like you're a drop in the ocean, or you might feel, or you might worry that you're a drop in the ocean, or that what you're doing is a drop in the ocean, I want to tell you that there is this global movement, and you should just keep in mind that the vastest, the biggest of oceans is made out of tiny, tiny drops or droplets. So let's just think of it as an ocean of drops. All right, all of us together, we're creating a change. So one drop here, one drop there, and you've got an ocean, you've got this flow, you've got this movement. This is what we want to create with people around us. So we don't need to ask them for big steps, because this creates resistance when we're asking them to do tiny, tiny steps that help them to feel good about themselves. It actually promotes this kind of feeling of belonging, of ownership over this process, and then it helps them to join this movement and take pride in it when things succeed. So this really enrolls them in a positive way. And once you have the culture in the organization, the organizational culture greenified, then you have the base to do like bigger stuff. So when you have a strong base, that's the time to, take this forward. But this base is very important. So when we're thinking about climate action, actually technologies exist. What we really need is the adoption of these technologies. Of course, we need more technologies, especially in carbon capturing and all that. This will take time, but what we're trying to do is, and what we're seeing that is happening, thanks to people like yourself, to people who care, is that what we want is that when these technologies are ready and are mature enough, so we'll have the strong base of all the companies working together and collaborating in all of the green influencers in Flaminga, and then we would be able to create adoption for the best types and the most efficient types of technologies. But first of all, we're just building the community and this base that is very important, the cultural base in the organization. So just imagine what if everyone would be using renewable energy, a food that's smarter, just would make smarter choices. They could have a hamburger here and there. I like nothing too extreme, right? But just try to make smart choices whenever you can, when you've had a good sleep at night or whatever. And when you find the people that support you. So this adoption is the key for a better world. And tiny steps are key to behavioral change. Now, I want to demonstrate this, how tiny steps can really change what's happening. So first of all, I just want to make just give you an example from general life, because we are, at the end of the day, what is adoption? That's behavioral change. And let's look at other areas in our life. So for example, sport. When I had to lose weight for medical reasons, it seemed like the end of the world, honestly. I was like, no, I'm never going to be able to do that. And what happened was that gradually I started kind of tricking myself. They like to call it like fake it till you make it, right? You just do the steps and then the cognitive thoughts follow. This is absolutely true. So I just did what I was able to do that day. So if I had absolutely no energy, I was like, okay, let's just change clothes, so that I'm ready for when I have the energy. And they're like, well, I already have this shirt on and everything. Maybe I'll just turn on YouTube, look, for a video or something. And then I was like, okay, so let's just do 5 minutes, and then 5 minutes would lead to 10 minutes, and 10 minutes would lead to 20 minutes, and to 45 minutes, and all that. And one day would lead to 2 days, and then to 3 days, and 1 week would lead to 2 weeks, and you got it, right? So that's exactly, I mean, climate change is, climate action is all about that. So these tiny steps are actually really, really important. Now, what we want to avoid is doing something small and then say, yay, we're green, that's it, we're done, we don't need to do anything anymore, and we're 100% green. That's like greenwashing. We don't want to do that. We need to be absolutely, accurate and transparent. And this is why we also have like this dashboard in Flaminga to show like where you're at on this, in this process and all that. We really need to say what we've done, but then also be careful not to make it more than it really is. So yeah, that's like, for example, if your goal would be to lose 20 kilos, you can't say I had a salad, yeah, I lost 20 kilos. It just doesn't work. And also it doesn't help to lose kilos if I hate myself or eat unhealthy food or don't eat in order to do that, right? Because the goal is to be healthy. So also when you want to increase the health of your organization, of your company, it doesn't help to do things that are good on one aspect, and then on the other is just really bad for the health of the organization. So in this aspect, you couldn't like spend millions of dollars for something that's green, but then it really affects the health of this organization financially wise. So it just doesn't make any sense. You need something balanced that's healthy for your organization. It needs to, the business of business is doing business. They need to make money, but there are so many things that are both, economical and green. Let's just start with that. Okay. And by the time that we've, done everything that we were able to do, the better technologies, the more efficient technologies are going to be already mature enough. So then we can take the next leap. So we just need to start. And if you've already started, we need to boost it. We need to take the next step. Always just think, what is the tiny step that I can take next? That's both green and, financial or promotes business objectives. So another reason why these tiny steps they're just like super crucial for the process is because we want to create a social norm and a social standard of expectations. We want to, make a reality. We want to, how about I just show you the video and then we can talk about all that. So just a sec.
To answer that question, we set up a hidden camera experiment to see if this woman would stand up at the sound of this tone, simply because everyone else is. You might be thinking you'd never go along with this. Or would you? After just 3 beeps, and without knowing why she's doing it, this woman is now conforming perfectly to the group. But what happens if we take the group away?
Elaine, please.
Okay, now she's alone. The crowd is gone and nobody is watching her, except our hidden cameras. What do you think she'll do? She's now conforming to the rules of the group without them even being there. Now, watch what happens when we introduce another outsider who doesn't know the rules.
For a noon appointment.
Have a seat, and they'll be out in just a couple minutes.
Great,
thanks so much.
everybody was doing, so I thought I was supposed to.
Think she'll teach the new guy what to do? We kept the cameras rolling as more unsuspecting patients arrived. And slowly but surely, what began as a random rule for this woman has now become the social norm for everyone in this waiting room. Here to explain what's going on in their brains is Jonah Berger of the University of Pennsylvania.
This sort of internalized form of herd behavior is part of what we call social learning. Starting at a very early age, when we see members of our group perform a task, our brains literally reward us for following in their footsteps.
When I saw everybody stand up, I felt like I needed to join them. Otherwise, I'm like excluded. Once I decided to go with it, then I felt much more comfortable.
Conformity is how we become socialized, but it can also cause us to develop bad habits or repeat past wrongs.
And it's why even this rebel, who wasn't standing for any of this nonsense, eventually joined the ranks. And the only thing more shocking than seeing how easily conformity affects the way you act is that similar forces are subconsciously shaping the way you think right now.
Okay, just a sec, let me present this again. Okay, so I love this video, right? It's kind of shocking. And when we want to create change in the company, sometimes someone would start to question it and ask like why and whatever. And I mean, that's fine if this helps, right? And they might even be not really against it, but like they would want to promote other objectives or whatever. So I would just say, like, don't spend your energy or too much time or effort in this aspect. Like, don't try to convince them or whatever. I mean, they just need time. Work with the ones who work with you. And if you know you can't get a budget from this department, do something. Try it from from other departments. Just work with what works. So try to use the easy steps that you're able to do, and gradually they would create the social norm. And this is what we want. So tiny steps have major impact. Because they create the behavioral change that leads to adoption, that leads to changing our economy. So you are the key. You have the power. Really, you really have it in your hands. So when we're talking about impact, there are two kinds of impact. You know how they say like soft skills, and I don't know what is the other one, like hard skills or whatever. That's also true when it comes to climate action and impact. So you have kind of the hard impact, which is emissions reduction, right? That's basically what helps to mitigate climate change. So, and also without really doing something that actually reduces the emissions, that's 100% greenwashing. You don't want to go there. It has to be something that's actually really green. You need to be sure to have the professional knowledge. We're always happy to support you in that. But then the other part of impact is the green inspiration, all right? How much psychological impact your actions have. So these small actions are really crucial in that aspect, because without them, actually, it's not really possible. It's a step that you must go through, enrolling everybody when you want to make a real change. So actually we need to finish soon. All right, let's just briefly go into that, and I'll be happy to take questions, or really feel free to contact us after this event. So what we can do, first of all, is just basically only use what you really need. All right, that's like a thumb rule. Align with business objectives. Just make sure that what you're doing doesn't take too many resources, or hopefully helps to save them. You know, learn more about food tech, food waste. In that aspect, there are so many things that we can do. Also about IT and green coding. We really don't have the time to go into too many details, but it's just such a vast world. But basically, if I want to give you one tip, is you can follow the receipts. Like if, for example, in your data usage, or in your data centers usage, there is something that costs a lot, it might mean that it's not necessarily very efficient. So if you're using a system or a service and it costs a lot of money to your company, try to brainstorm, you know, with other colleagues, see what's not really efficient there, and you'll be able to save a lot of energy, resources, and also money. So a really good way to experiment all these green best practices would be to have greener events. We also offer a package at Flaminga of greener events that can help you to get the strategy that you need. And really the great thing about events is that it's kind of like a playground, because you can test many things. You can test the food, you can test the reaction from colleagues, and it's not a commitment, like a long-term commitment, and you're using existing budgets anyway. You're just using them in a smarter way, and then everyone sees it's great, and then you can, you know, adopt it in the company. So this is really a really cool and fun way of, you know, doing stuff. So what you can do right now is, first of all, set up goals, and then, you know, try to find the small steps that takes you there. We also offer, you know, a product that does that, but we also have a free kind of toolkit that can help you with enrolling your management, with just getting started. So if you need this, please feel free. I want to share with you. So if you're entering LinkedIn, you can find us if you just simply type Flaminga. Okay, that's us with pink logo. And here in the About section, you can find our website. So if you click on it, you can reach to our website and book a demo. Talk to us, all right? We'll be happy to chat. And then once you've signed up, filled in your details, you'll be able to enter the platform. So once you're here, you can find your strategy. So it's really simple, really easy to use. You just know what to know step by step. So for example, if I want to enroll my management and, you know, tell them about all the benefits of sustainability and climate action and the business objectives and all that. So I have everything laid out for me here, you know, with all the training videos, presentations, everything. So feel free to use us. We're really here to help, and just let us know, and be sure to enter our website, book a demo, and let's chat. So to summarize, use only what you need. Small change is better than no change, and it is the beginning of a bigger change. So it is really important. And we're talking about a process, right? So evolution, not revolution, as Noam said before. Also, inspire, you know, act, use your voice. I know it's not that easy sometimes. It can be terrifying at times to say what you think, you know, speak from the heart. But it's crucial that someone does this, right? Because the more people speak about climate action, the better it becomes. So please use your voice. We need your voice. The world needs your voice. And also encourage change makers. Every little thing that you do to encourage other people that are using their voice. I mean, honestly, just even the fact that you are here with us in this webinar, in this event, is super helpful. It really encourages us to see that people care, that people want change, and do what it takes to, to make the change happen. And so just even being here is absolutely the beginning of this change. So it really matters. So thank you so much for encouraging us and for supporting us and for being here. So thank you for everything. And just ask yourself, what is the next step that you could be taking, first thing tomorrow morning. I really hope that this gave you the inspiration that you needed at this point. And please feel free to contact us. Here is our email. And thank you so much. So back to you, Julia.
Thank you, Lee. It's really important to take these concepts and bring them to a practical day-to-day level of what can I do today? Where to begin? We especially thank our listeners who took the time to join us and learn about climate action and corporate sustainability. Joining and learning is the first climate action worth taking, and it is a very important one. Thank you, Google Campus for Startup, for hosting this event and for your support in general. If you would love to learn more about how you can make an impact, please contact us for more information at hi@flaminga.earth.
Okay, bye everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you for Flaminga for holding this event.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you everyone so much for joining us. And please contact us. Let's be in touch. And please do keep on doing what it is that you're doing to make this world a better place. And just remember, whatever way, that's your way, you're doing it your way, and you're amazing. And just thank you for being you. Have a great day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.